You know, Camaro is really the great American experience. And with the rebirth of this legend, this made it a perfect car to tie the history of our country into it.
GM actually had a lot of foresight to commission, this to be done. Commemorating all the men and women that have served this country, I think was a brilliant.
It's distinctly American. It's a part of Americana. It brings back a simpler time to people. It really was a simpler time, but it's amazing how we forget about things looking through the glass of yesteryear.
American pride comes about, obviously, for the pride in our fighting men and women that have served this country throughout our entire history, to give us the freedom we have today. And that's why I'm so proud of, General Motors seeing that and realizing, that, and having that kind of pride in those people, as well as most of us as individuals do. To see a company, do that makes me proud. Makes me proud of General Motors, for one thing, too.
Mickey, darn it, you made me cry the first time I saw the car. Mickey, words escape me. I'm just so taken by this car, and I couldn't be happier with what I see. And I hope America agrees with me, and I'm sure they do.
Hello, my name's Mickey Harris. I'm the artist that was given the great privilege by General Motors to paint this car. This car is called the American Pride car. This right here is where it all began. It started with the Revolutionary War, and obviously this is a famous painting with Washington crossing the Delaware, and their old flintlock guns and their push poles and getting across on the ice. Transitioning from that up to the War of 1812, this is another little part felt compelled to do, and it's the eagle as he's holding up the United States Constitution in his talons, holding it out, as if to say, remember this? This portrait of Abe Lincoln I did. It's kind of interesting about this. It was late one night, and I was already gone home from work, and I called up Greg over at Mountain Muscle and said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm getting in my pajamas. I says, well, why don't you get back dressed and come over and open the shop up? I said, I feel like I want to paint Abe Lincoln.
And then you look at the picture of Abraham Lincoln, and understanding that this man didn't sketch anything in the car, he would simply look at a picture and freehand it onto the car.
I must have ate my Wheaties that morning, because I rock and rolled through this Abe Lincoln portrait, and I never had to change anything. And I've always stressed, you plan it out too much, and it's going to be stagnant, because the creativity comes in the process. And one thing will lead, and all of a sudden it'll change. That was a great and fun experience for me doing that, because it was just, the stars were aligned for me when I painted that.
Great design sells cars, and great artwork comes from the heart. It's not something that you can ever learn. I often wonder if it's not the higher power talking to the artist so that it comes across. And when you look at this car, it's emotional.
This war was definitely a war of technology advancements, especially the aircraft. The first time aircraft was used in battle. And also tanks were invented during World War I. But the aircraft, this was the golden age of flying, back in those days. This was true seat-of-the-pants flying. And those pilots were wild and dashing and chivalrous were those days, but nonetheless, it's still war, and wars are ugly. But the aircrafts that they were used were beautiful flying machines. And behind me is a replica of a Spad. And this is awesome, because this plane was built here by this crew from original instructions. This is unbelievable. This was completely hand-built, this replica, by original plans by an entire team of guys. And look, here's a cross-section of some of the stuff. I mean, this is literally every piece hand-built and put together by these guys. Every wire, everything created by them and built it here. I understand 23,000 man-hours. To put that in perspective, on the Camaro, I've got 300 man-hours in my part of it. So you can imagine the effort that went into this with these guys.
We really gave Mickey the opportunity to express himself. I basically said, I'd like this to honor all branches of the military service, and I would like it to be maybe a history lesson. But I'm pretty much giving you carte blanche because you're the artist, and you've got a brilliance that's God-given.
This here is pretty much the centerpiece of the whole car. This is the World War II area. We had some on the sides that went across on it, but this is really the centerpiece here. And why we did that, well, was because, one, it was probably the biggest war that we fought. Also, in most people's mind, the most just for a cause, as well as the fact that these veterans are now dying off at such a rate, and as a tribute to those that are still living, we really wanted to show something, you know, to commemorate and to thank them for their service.
My father and my uncle served in World War II, and they're in that great Chevy showroom in the sky these days. But when I first looked at this car, I felt their presence and their pride.
The scenes on this depict some of the most iconic images of that conflict. MacArthur coming in on the shores of the Philippines, and Eisenhower talking to the troops before going in, the paratroopers into D-Day. Center, of course, the flag raising at Iwo Jima, which is probably the #1 image of the war, but also the famous kiss in Times Square. The flag is, of course, the image that flows throughout, that ties everything together. And if you look at the nurse where she's back being kissed, she's actually holding on to the flag. And then I tried to put some other images even in this section, you know, that showed, you know, some of the ships and the planes and the, you know, the other areas of the fighting. This was like the Battle of Midway, you know, when the battleships. This is one of the battles that really turned the tide for America, and here with the Japanese Zero going down. And also it transitions here to the Corsair, which was a great plane that the Navy flew and the Marines, and it's the greatest honor for me. I mean, literally, it makes me feel so good. I mean, I've had these guys come up and thank me, you know, shake my hand and tell me thank you, and I'm saying, don't be thanking me. Good God, you know, you're the one that sacrificed.
You think of World War II and the number of people that we were able to give freedom to, all of Europe. That's a very, very powerful painting. As I say, it's hard for me to even look at it without the tears flowing. To me, that is the genius of Mickey Harris.
Now, the Korean War wasn't that long after World War II. So a lot of the guys that served there were veterans of World War II. You look at this image and you think, well, it's cool, but there was a lot of thought went into this particular piece. And that being that this guy here, this sergeant up front, stone-faced, hardcore, this is a World War II vet that's now in the Korean conflict. He's leading the boys. And, you know, he's running, he's taking first charge on it. And we personalized him too. You know, I put a wedding ring on his finger. You know, wanted the people to know this guy had a family at home.
You look at what must have been going through Mickey's mind to come up with the magnificent artwork, but it's in all the details. You know, there's a World War II veteran who's serving in Korea, and you see that he's got a wedding ring on. You know, that's a detail that all of a sudden kind of hits you right square in the face.
But that was the Korean War era, and this guy's just a tough old cat, man.